Okay, we will begin. Hello to all of you. We join palms, vow, recitation of the four great vows. I vow to deliver innumerable sentient beings. I vow to cut off endless vexations. I vow to master limitless approaches to Dharma. I vow to attain supreme Buddhahood. Welcome to you all. In the past weeks, we've been talking about living with right view and making it relevant to your daily lives. Now I want to kind of get you to go back into the deep end for a little bit and work with that. We're going to be talking about noumenon and phenomenon, the apparent, the absolute, the conditioned, unconditioned, conceivable, inconceivable. These topics all mean the same in the sense that they mean the same to us as sentient beings. They, in terms of words, to the Buddha mind, really have no essential meaning to it, but we'll get to that. I wanted to start off with just a few little baby steps as we go along with this, and to understand what is meant by this noumenon. And one of the things that we can say is that the noumenon is like if you had a fraction, and everything that you could possibly think about was the denominator. And over that, you would have whatever it is that is at the present moment appearing. And that would be the fraction of the mind. And if you tried to use your mind to possibly think of anything that could be considered a mind, from a microbe to the largest structures in the cosmos and beyond, that would all be in the denominator. The numerator would be whatever is happening in that moment. Our problem is that we always tend to think that this present moment that we're looking at things, this is the denominator, that we're using our brain to see that. But in fact, we are extremely mistaken by that. It's not easy for us to change, excuse me, our viewpoint about this, because we've been so conditioned lifetime after lifetime to believe that this is real. I wanted to take you back into my life a bit, where I had been practicing Qigong for quite a while and became accomplished at it. And at one point in time, I was practicing with one particular master, and this was what we call closed door training. It wasn't something that was related to the public or given to the public to practice. It was something that was very intimate with the master and with just a few of his best students. And it was kind of interesting because I was actually the only Western person that was with this particular master, but he had recognized that I had some kind of potential, so he allowed me to stay with the group. We were studying Qigong, and the type of Qigong we were studying was called Wei To Qigong. Wei To is a Dharma protector. And I didn't know anything about that. I just said, well, we're studying Wei To Qigong. You know, I saw the statue of Wei To, but I really was pretty much ignorant about most of serious Buddhist study at that point. But this particular Qigong master went to one student and said, you know, you need to introduce Gilbert to the Dharma. And so can you go get him a book? And the student said, what book could I give him? There's so many Dharma books. What could I possibly get him? He goes, get him any book, any book. And the person goes, okay. And it's interesting because this master understood, at least at that point, the fate and the karma and understanding whatever that I was going to get would be what I was going to get and what at that point would be relevant to me. So the student brought back a book, it wasn't this exact book, but this is the Diamond That Cuts Through Illusion, the Diamond Sutra. And they went, here's the book. And with no further instruction, no nothing, here's the book, read it. And I looked at the book and I just opened it up, not starting from the beginning, but as I opened it, I felt as if my body was being elevated, was kind of had a buoyancy to it. And I felt very strange at this kind of a sensation, this very lightness. And the thing is that when I closed the book, I would just feel like I had weight again. But every time I opened the book, I would feel weightless. This was very, very unusual. But because I'd been practicing Qigong, there's quite a bit of stuff in closed door Qigong or upper level Qigong that is unusual and what people would think is very, very strange. But at some point you become used to it. So I just thought, this book is an interesting book, but it must have some significance because every time I open it up, I feel very, very light. I've never had a book that made that kind of a sensation to me. So I started to read the book, page after page after page. And sometimes I felt like I would turn the page and I'm reading the same page that I read previous. And I'm going, how is this page different than the page before that? And how is this one? And at some point, I thought I was working a puzzle like a Rubik's Cube. I just couldn't figure it out, but I had this kind of a feeling what Master Sheng talked about when one is in this kind of has an interest. It's like a piece of hard candy, like a taffy that's stuck on the back of your tongue, and it's sweet, but it's still stuck there, and you want to resolve it. You want to swallow it, but you can't swallow it. For some reason, you can't get it. And so I would read it and say, what does this mean? And I was trying to figure out what did it say and why did it keep repeating these things? And it was difficult, but there is, in terms of the Diamond Sutra, it doesn't give up its treasures quite easily. It requires you to have a deep respect and a sincerity in terms of looking at it. And as I began to look at it, I began to see that there was something in it, that why they repeated something, there must be something important there. And the bits and pieces began to as if they were moving around and reorganizing and trying to prioritize itself in terms of what was being said. So those of you who have read the Diamond Sutra understand what this feeling is, because it's not something that you read and you go, oh, I understand it 100%. This is it, blah, blah, blah. No, it's like some people will read it and they'll just go, this is nonsense, and just put it away. Or it's too deep for me. But it wasn't that way. It was that I really wanted to know what it meant. I wanted to see it in that way, to try to figure out that way. And in this way, you have to know a little bit about my personality. And one of my favorite stories was that there was a story of this alchemist, and this alchemist was able to change any kind of common metal into gold. And so he was quite friendly with the people around, and people would bring, and they'd bring a big cast iron pot, and he would change it into gold for them. And so they would take it away. They were so happy. And one day, this young man appeared at the door, but he had nothing in his hands. Not a ladle, not a kettle, not a hoe or anything to transform. And so the master asked him, "You did not bring anything with you. What is it, that you want to transform?" And the young man said, "I don't want you to change anything into gold for me. I want to know how you do it." And that was my approach in terms of when I practiced Qigong. So when I saw the master do some things, and they can do some very incredible things, I wasn't in awe of him. I wanted to know how he did it. And I took the same approach to the Diamond Sutra and said, someone understands this. Someone knows about this. No, I don't want to hold them in high esteem. I want to know how they understood it. Not that I lack respect. I had respect that they worked their way through it, but I wanted to know how to do it, how they were able to crack the Diamond Sutra. And it is something that can be done. But at that point, initially, it was escaping me, although it's mystifying to know that there's something there, especially from that initial feeling of buoyancy. I knew there was something that I had to look at, to try to get to. And it's interesting because one of the mantras that we had in the Qigong that always attracted me, and we learned quite a few of them. Actually, they were tied to Buddhism. I didn't know that at the time. But one of them was, what appears to be real is not real. And what appears to be unreal is real. And it sounds pretty, how would you say, like esoterically profound, like, wow, that's heavy. Heavy in what way? We don't know, but it sounds cool, but it's kind of like turning everything upside down, which is true, which is what it does, is it reorganizes and prioritizes how you look at things, where we believe, that this here, we see it and we flip through it and we say, this is a book. And so we understand it in this way. But essentially, it's something that is difficult for us to fathom. Little by little in my practice of Qigong and then to the Dharma, I began to really understand that. I shouldn't say understand it. I realized the importance of the phrase. The realization did not come from words and phrases, but through a direct experience of turning the mind's eye inward. You often hear that in the treatises of the Qigong masters, to turn the mind's eye inward. We don't know what that means. We can't figure that out. It's something, if you read the Sheng Sutra, the first volume, and it was turning Ananda around and around and around. He couldn't figure out what the Buddha was talking about. And he was thinking that it was something that was directional. I turn the eye in, so I look inside, and so my mind must be within my head, kind of a way. But it isn't in this way. It is a reversing of, or a correct view, right view, perception of everything that is happening, not in a directional way where it's like we're now looking at ourselves, but looking at everything in this way. The words truly escape what it means to turn the mind's eye inward, but what it's intending is to use the perception of mind to see things, not the idea of the consciousness or the five skandha, because that's still all within samsara. No matter what happens, it's all within samsara. And therein lie a lot of the problems in terms of some of the limitations of Qigong, was because it was something that one could manipulate samsara, can transform it and change it, but not with a deep, profound understanding of what was doing. You could just bend reality. And so if you want to do something, you bend the reality, but you don't know why, you don't know where it comes from. You just are harnessing the power of the mind to do that, but not with an understanding of what is truly there, what is truly this preciousness or gold in which the Diamond Sutra is talking about. And so when the Diamond Sutra talks about that, if you have all the sands of the Ganges River, and if all those sands of the Ganges River were Ganges rivers, and all of those were turned into jewels, precious jewels that you gave to the poor, or treasure chests that you gave to the poor, that merit would be great, but not as great as reciting 4 lines of the sutra to someone else, or to study it or present it to people. That value is inconceivable. And when I first was reading it, I was going, okay, well, maybe this thing takes itself too seriously, or maybe these people think that it's too important. How could 4 lines be a difference? But then as I began to practice more and more, I saw that no matter what we did, is if we gave to the poor all of these jewels, at some point in time, you could go to the poor person and say, hey, I've got a bucket of jewels here, do you want them? And they'd say, what good is them? Because my whole house is filled with jewels. I can't possibly spend them. And it's hurting to walk on them. So maybe that isn't quite as valuable as it appears to be, because it's not real. You can't take it with you when you die. I don't care how many jewels they put in the coffin with you. You're not going to take it with you. When you come out the other side, you're going to come out bare naked. You're not going to have a jewel and holding on to anything when you come out. You just come out kicking and screaming, craving again. So it isn't really a solution to the world's problems. It's not a solution to make everybody rich. If everybody is rich in this way, then the jewels, they lose their value, wouldn't they? Because you'd have so many of them. So it's like when the Europeans went to the Polynesian islands, and they're trading, and they're seeing these incredible pearls that the people had. And they were so gladly giving it to him. And the Europeans were saying, oh, these fools, they have pearls everywhere, and they're giving us to him for just some simple trinket that we get. But the value was not in the pearls, maybe with its beauty. But I mean, if you have a lot of them, then it doesn't matter. But we see things all twisted. We don't really understand the value. But then why is reciting 4 lines of Diamond Sutra so valuable? It is because it sets into motion the ability of a person to obtain the realization, and I say that very loosely because there's no obtaining or attaining a realization, to see that this world is not real, to see that this world and perfecting it is not the ultimate solution to it. Whether we try to make everyone rich is not the solution. It is that if someone was in a bad dream and they were being chased by a monster, how much would they give to be awakened in that moment so they would not be consumed by this monster? And then realizing that there wasn't a monster to begin with. It was just an illusion. It was a dream. And that they had this power far beyond whatever the monster could do because they created the monster. They conjured it up. How much would that be worth? It would be worth a heck of a lot more than a house full of jewels. Why? Because you, at that point, awakening, would have a choice. If you wanted to go back into the dream to save others, you could do that, but you would know the difference. You would know that this is not real. You would know what is real. What is real? Mind is real. It's always been that way. Mind has always been real. We are the illusion. We don't understand that. Sometimes we're afraid of that, to try to hear that and to try to do that. But when we understand that, then we're moving along. We're beginning to work towards this awakening. And the awakening doesn't have to come at one loud thunderclap and then you're awake. It could come in very small segments of progression of realizations and epiphanies. I talk about realizations and epiphanies. Epiphanies to me are momentary insights that one has towards something, maybe hearing a turning phrase. A realization is something that's an experience that can last for a while, but it is a feeling beyond this world, a sensation that perhaps you have one foot in samsara and the other one extending out to the infinite. Now, there's no way of really talking about that. And if somebody tells me I had this feeling of doing that, I would probably hit them with a stick for just copying what I'm saying. So I hesitate to talk about that, but I'm trying to tell you the way in which you sincerely penetrate the sutras, especially this particular sutra, that gives us the gateway to the absolute. And it talks about things such as that the Buddha cannot be known by his 32 marks. Now, some of you have been around for a while, you know what I'm talking about. Others don't know what that is, but there's sutras that talk about the 32 marks of the Buddha, for instance, the top knot and the curly hair, the the pearlescent skin, the webbed fingers, the wand symbol, things like that, where you would say, okay, this is what the Buddha appears to. And the Diamond Sutra says, wait a second. I know you guys are doing this, and there's artist renditions, and they're pretty darn good ones. They make the Buddha look pretty good. But didn't they make him look like a human being? And do you think that a Buddha looks like a human being? Perhaps but in a different way than you think. When I see you all, when I see people in a live audience or here in this audience here, I see people as Buddhas, but I don't see them in their human form as a Buddha. I just see the Buddha nature appearing at that point in the guise of a human body in a human realm. But if you became a Buddha, you could not take this body with you. That's why they say the Buddha cannot be known by his 32 marks. It's giving you a hint that whatever is here in this human realm has to be let go. That we have to have this faith to jump into the void. Sometimes they call it the abyss. And again, these are terms that I think they sound so frightening to jump into something that we don't know about. But you have to have faith in this. In terms of that, you cannot use the coin of the realm here, your body and your thinking, to go beyond that. That your body and your thinking is nevertheless part of the Buddha realm, but only to the extent that it is a transitory form and illusory at that. In a realm, who knows where we're at, where we're located, or what time is it really? Like, what time is it on Alpha Centauri compared to where we're at? Or some black hole at the corners or the edges of the universe that we know that could be just around the corner from another universe. We don't know that. But we look at things from the viewpoint of what we know, this and what we see and hear. And it's different. When video games first came out a long time ago, I remember playing with my kids. And there was this one game that was somebody that you would ride a motorbike in a rough terrain, like a desert or mountain thing, and you'd ride all over the place. But at some point, you would hit against this wall, and you couldn't go any further because that was the end of whatever the creator of that program said. That's where this ends, and so you can't go any further. The same is in this dream when you're trying to apply the physics, the logic, the quantum mechanics, whatever, to try to decipher this world and the meaning of this world, you run into a wall because it's just a dream. We don't know that. We don't understand that. It's difficult for us to do that, but we run into that wall. And all we can do at that point is, if we don't really want to think about that, is try to be the best person we can be. But again, to be the best person is like Confucianism, to be the perfect person. But it isn't in this way. If we try to be an immortal like the Taoist, we're still in samsara. We still run into the wall. We're limited. Mind is not that way. Mind created everything around you, everything that's gone on in the past, everything that will happen in our so-called future to the present moment is created by mind. We don't understand that either. But you have to try to be sincere and say, just because I don't understand it doesn't mean that it doesn't have a validity to it. And that's what's important, is we have to begin to look at things and see if there's a validity there, if there's something there. And we're kind of looking at things and thinking, you're dreaming of what mind could be. That's all you can do in the samsaric realm, is dream. Why? Because you're a dream. You can't go beyond it. But mind is capable of going beyond it. That's why the Diamond Sutra is there. But it's not an easy thing, because as I begin to talk to you, I keep running into this wall, these barriers, the failure of words and phrases to be able to express what's in my heart to present. But nevertheless, it's something that needs to be presented. And so at somewhere along the line, I went way off my notes, but we'll continue on. But in this way, when we look at things, we see that in the sutras and in the treatises, there's two levels of training. The secondary level is following the precepts, the Eightfold Path, the 6 or 10 paramitas, the vows, all the factors. There's 6 factors of enlightenment. And we accord our life with those practices and in some way try to be this perfect person. But that does not give us an exit pass out of the dream. That just makes us a better citizen of the dream. And we can use that, and we can use it to help make a pure land around us. And perhaps somebody will find the exit pass, but it's not easy to find it by copying and trying to be this perfect person. Because by virtue of you trying to say you're going to become a perfect person, you're already limiting yourself in terms of the way that you practice. The primary practice is utilizing the perception of mind itself. This is the absolute. The other is the apparent. And in the absolute, then what we do is we begin to see things as they are. We begin to use wisdom in the present moment to see all of the causes and conditions that are coming together that bring forth whatever is appearing in that moment, from the form of everything around us, the people, the environment, to the emotions, the volitions, what people are intending to do. And so all of the sensations that we feel, all of those all come together, but we experience it as sentient beings and never think that all of these things are fragments coming together in a way, let's say, like iron filings being pulled by a magnet together and creating some kind of a form. We don't understand that. We think that everything is complete and connected and the form is there as it is without giving any kind of an attention that maybe all this stuff is all coming together through a force that we don't understand. This karmic force. When we begin to see the karmic force, then we begin to see the rise and fall of appearances. Now, understanding karma gives us an understanding of how things are manipulated in the samsaric realm. What we are looking at is not how to change so much the environment, but how it changes. We want to know that. We want to know the alchemy of that person that could change common metals to gold, because that's liberation. When we see that, then we understand that if we can do that, other people can do that. Then there's no need to leave the dream. Why should we? We already understand it's a dream, but we have an interest in awakening others from the dream. That's simple. That's common. That's basic compassion with that. We don't have to wait. I don't want to go to the spirit in the sky when I die. Sounds like a song. But in any case, it's something that when we look at things, we see them as all woven together. But we also, because we know that everything is created by the mind, we know how to modify the samsara to create a pure land on earth. It's difficult for us because there's very few of us in this world that hear this tune. And very few of them, after hearing the tune, wanting to do this. In studying the sutras and the treatises, there are 3 levels of understanding. The first is the ordinary understanding. We could say the words that are there, and one can obtain some form of a benefit reading the words. But at some point when they talk about things that are not understandable, then our logic and our reasoning fail us, and we just set that aside. I'll deal with that later. I just want to be a good person. The second level is when one begins to hear things and begins to understand that there is a wisdom there. There's something that's making sense, that's something that's coming together, that's clear. And one begins to see the clarity of it. How we see the clarity of it is because we begin to see that in the present moment. One of the things that gives me great joy is when people talk to me about that they have some kind of an experience in the present moment, that they're seeing things clearly. And that's a good start. As long as one doesn't think that they've awakened or become enlightened or whatever, it's good because it's showing that this works, that there's something there. And as long as we keep practicing in this way, we don't have to worry about enlightenment. At that point, there is a change in attitude and a change in sincerity in the practitioner. They no longer are interested in their own salvation or interested in somebody giving them a ribbon and saying, you are enlightened. You understand everything. You've seen your true nature. It doesn't really work that way. If someone has some kind of an experience like that, they will just be more interested in sharing how they got there. They don't want to keep it like a real secret. and say, I'm enlightened, or I have this realization and you don't. What is it? Oh, you'll never understand it. Quite to the contrary, they spend their entire life trying to share this with people, knowing that its value is far beyond any kind of treasures. Even if I said you win the multi-billion-dollar lotto, so what? You still die. But to help people awaken from the dream, the value is incredible. We don't understand that. We can't see things in that way. But this profoundness is there. The third level of understanding is not really a level of understanding as much as it's experiencing the Dharma that is being stated. So as one reads it, one falls into it. One looks beyond what's there and sees it in no longer as two-dimensional words on a page. There was a story of this one person that was practicing with this one master. He couldn't get it. And finally, the master said, why don't you go to this other master? And he has ways of bringing people to a realization. Maybe you can go with him. So he went with this other master. And sure enough, this master brought him to certain realizations. And he realized how he was brought to those realizations. And when he went back to the monastery that he came from, he came into the master's quarters, and there was the master, and he was reading a scroll. Come on in, you know. And he said, how did it go? And the student of him said, it's a shame that you sit there and you read the scroll and you try to understand the Dharma when the answer is 3 feet in front of the scroll. And he really had penetrated literally the sutra to go beyond the words. And it is in this way that it's no longer words on a page. It's as if it's a hologram of everything around. And wherever one looks, all of those words, all of that there is demonstrated immediately, instantaneously, infinitely demonstrated. All of that. The words were not untrue. They just were not penetrated. So whoever wrote those words, whether it was a treatise or it was the Buddha's words, they were sincere in terms of presenting this information, but it was the limitation of the person that was reading it, whether it was the master or the student, that was unable to penetrate through. So we have to be very, very diligent in this and to try to penetrate through to get to this, what I call the esoteric. Now, when I refer to the esoteric, I don't refer to the esoteric as the esoteric school historically that was there. When I use the word esoteric, it is in the same way as the Chinese use that word in terms of saying there's a secret meaning or a hidden meaning to this. And there is. It is a different channel of communication, not by words and phrases, but it is from the sincerity of the heart. And it does broadcast. It's broadcasting all the time. We just can't tune into it, so we miss it. But in all of this, I'm broadcasting in those 3 channels. And so when you feel it, then you're getting more of an understanding. It opens it up. And so then we see things differently. We see the world as components as it was put together, as all of these things that were happening. Nevertheless, understanding that all of those appearances, everything coming together, are presented on the matrix of the mind, the foundation of the mind. And we see that in that way. For those of you who have an interest in rocks and crystals, the crystals, they don't grow just on their own. They always have a bedrock that they grow on, and then they form on this bedrock. Sometimes they'll call it a matrix that it forms on. And so people are so interested in the crystals, never understanding that but for the bedrock, the crystals would not be there. And when we see this and we understand it, we begin to understand what phenomena and noumenon is, the noumenon being the foundation, the platform. And I was talking to somebody over the weekend, one of my students, and she was saying that they were studying the Platform Sutra. And I said, the Platform Sutra is very good because this Platform Sutra is aptly named because it serves as the foundation from which to spring from, so that one can clearly see from where things come from. And without it, it's difficult for us to practice. If I just said to you, everything's created by the mind, there would be very few people would understand that. And if all I just said was everything created by the mind, which is actually what I say all the time, but I find different ways to say it. And that is the necessity of developing this foundation. So every time you come and you listen to the Dharma, you're creating a stronger and stronger foundation. And it's funny because sometimes when I have people and then they go to talk to other people and they try to explain what they've been studying, it's difficult because those people, they don't have the foundation to understand what you're talking about. You're going, wow, that's like way out there. It's going over my head. But be patient, little by little, they will come to it. But you have to find the ways to be able to explain it to people, just as I'm trying to do with you, taking these little baby steps with the Diamond Sutra, which in reality are these monumental leaps of light years of steps that we're taking. But if you follow with me, you wouldn't know that. You would just think they're just little baby steps. So when I read the Diamond Sutra, the first part that really had a great impact on me was the end. And I kind of stylize it and paraphrase, and some people say, oh, that's not how it really ends, or that's not the exact words. To me, they're the exact words because these are the ones that come from my heart. And it says, all that you should think of this fleeting world. So what you should think of, examine in this world that's fleeting, meaning that it's going by so quickly, is a morning star, a dewdrop on a leaf, a flash of lightning in a summer cloud, a bubble in a stream, an illusion, a phantasm, a dream. All of those mean the same thing, that they're momentary. It doesn't matter how long you think you've been here, how many years you've got in. Sometimes when I go with monastics, I will bring them a fossil that's maybe 600 million years old. Think about that, 600 million years old. And yet we've only been here maybe for 90 years, and that was knuckle dragging for 30,000 years. But that's like a flash of lightning in a summer cloud. Just that time period is so much. And the 600 million years is even the same thing, a bubble in a stream. We cannot understand that. We don't know that. We measure everything. I have a ruler and I measure things, and I measure time with a watch. But really, is it real or not real? What is there? No. And how do we measure things? And is it really that much time? How do we do that? If somebody says, sometimes people are meditating and I take them into an induced meditation and say, that was 40 minutes. And they go, no, that was only 5 minutes. Because the measurement of time at that moment has escaped because they have suspended the ego. So it's very, very different. But when we see this gives us a great strength to be able to see how things are, how we look at things. Now I'm going to give you another example, which I absolutely love this example from one of the sutras. And it said that on a single strand of hair, 5 billion Buddha worlds can be on that single strand of hair. I can't really help you with that example, but on that, without protrusion, meaning that if you had a single strand of hair, you wouldn't have a single strand and then a bunch of things globbed up on it. It would just look like a single strand of hair and without any protrusion to it at all. Is that possible? It throws us into a different way of looking at things. Now, how do you see that when you see this idea of the single strand of hair? Do you see it as, wow, these Buddha worlds must be very, very, very small, right? I'm kind of looking at you guys to see if there's any kind of a reaction to this. But you may think that it's very, very small. Perhaps the hair is very, very large. How do we measure it? Where do we measure it? Who is measuring it? It could be a hair that extends from here to the end of the universe and beyond, to have that many Buddha worlds in it, and as wide as this universe. That would fit them all, right? It all depends on how we perceive, how we have a viewpoint. But in that, you looking at 5 billion Buddha worlds on a single strand of hair, whether the hair is incredibly big or the Buddha worlds are infinitesimally small, where did you perceive that? You perceived it in mind, created in mind. How could it not be this way? Everything is in this way, where we're perceiving things in mind. We think that we're thinking about it. We think we're using our consciousness, our cleverness to look at it. But you can't. If you really looked at that and said that this is possible, it will blow your head off because it's inconceivable. It's inconceivable in samsara that would happen. There is an example, for instance, in the Vilamakritti Sutra, where Vilamakritti, an elder, is feigning that he's ill and he's lying on the sofa waiting for Manjusri and his retinue to show up. His retinue at that point was so many people. They all heard that Manjusri was going to go talk to Vilamakritti. So there was thousands of people coming. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't think I can fit 1,000 people in my house. Maybe 950, but after that, they would have to stand on the roof or whatever. But this is thousands of people. And so Vilamakritti, he just simply made everything disappear and made his room incredibly large. And he even dismissed all of his servants. Boom, they're gone. And yet some of them were still there, but you couldn't see them. And he made this room big, and it said that everybody came in to Vilamakritti's room, and the town that he was in was not crushed by his expansion of the room, that the town remained the same. How is this? Because we're thinking about it from the idea of the this world. We're thinking about it from this way. But these sutras, they're defying us to redefine reality. If we hold on to this world, for sure we die. If we don't hold on to the world, this body, this corporal body will die. But that which is speaking right now has never been born, never been created. That which is listening to me right now has never been born, never created. It is mine. We don't understand that. This is way beyond us. So by now, some of you are kind of like, wow, this is like getting pretty deep. It's okay. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Just hang in there with this. You have to kind of look at it, because once you do, and then you go back to reading the sutra, you'll go, oh, that's what Gilbert was talking about. Now I know why they say these things. Because of that. It's the same thing as in the Diamond Sutra when it said that the Dipamkara Buddha had predicted that Shakyamuni Buddha would become a Buddha in another lifetime. How could he do that? Because it's already happened. In mind, it's already happened. It's just we're waiting for this dream to catch up with what's already there. We don't know that because we don't understand how these mechanisms of mind work. We only see it from the mechanics that we can try to impose on it from our physics, but they're limited in terms of how we can use them. But if we can use them in the right way, it really makes a difference. I see that my time has expired, and I got to 1.5 pages of my 5 pages. So we'll continue on with this next week. I want to hear from you. I want to hear what you're thinking about this and what you think. How this is going over to you. I would like some feedback, so I'll leave it all to you. Any questions or comments? Yes, Sam, go ahead.
Hey, Gilbert, thank you so much for your speech today too, because it's funny, I actually last night before going to bed, I was checking my Google tabs on my phone, and I always keep a tab open just on the Google search for Noumenon, because it's always a topic I struggle with quite a bit, and I was revisiting just like different takes and definitions in the word and examples. So pretty funny how the Dharma talk today ended up being about Noumenon. But I did appreciate, after practicing a little bit longer and hearing your talks, your metaphor of Noumenon being kind of like this denominator, as well as how that relates to the bedrock metaphor, how it's like we get captivated by these crystals or this phenomenon, not realizing its foundation. Like, and can I ask, would an example of this foundation, let's say these foundations that we don't actually see that are the basis of our reality, are these the things like the three marks, or like impermanence, or like emptiness? Are these things, because it's not like you can grab impermanence and go, here it is, but it's something that you can see in all appearances as they arise and cessate.
It's an interesting thing because I think that it's best that you look into this rather than for me to try to explain it to you. There is a totality there that the Huayan school talks about, of this kind of a consciousness. But when they refer to consciousness, they don't refer to consciousness the same way as conventional consciousness. Same thing with the Yogacara school and mind only, or consciousness only. Sometimes they call it consciousness only, but it's really mind only. There is another aspect to that, which is, like you say, it is this bedrock or matrix. But our part that we have to kind of look at is, how do we distinguish that, or do we distinguish it? Do we look at it? And I will talk about this more next week, about existence and non-existence, and how it's difficult for us to transcend a notion such as that. Is it existent? Does it exist, or does it not exist? Does absolute reality exist and apparent reality not exist? And as you begin to look at it and you try to create a structure for that, it doesn't make any sense, because when we try to say that, how do we separate it out? It becomes very, very difficult for us to do that. I mean, the Christians had a heck of a time with their construct, and I kind of, in my way of looking at it, I think that their structure of the Father, the Son, and Holy Ghost parallels our understanding of the Dharmakaya, Sambhogakaya, and Nirmanakaya. But they ran into a lot of problems with all of that, as to say, well, who is the Son, who is the Father, and what about this ghost? And it's interesting, because they're trying to resolve it from this kind of a samsaric viewpoint, and trying to personify or anthropomorphize these deities. And the Buddhists, way before them, understood that was a trap, understood that was painting into the corner. And that's what Nagarjuna, he did not say, does it exist or not exist? You have to use that from your springboard to try to look at this, and then try to see from there, ask your questions and keep asking them. You're not going to get a satisfactory answer. It's okay. It's all right. Just keep asking the question. You can't believe how many questions I have. I always ask the question. I'm always working on it. I don't have the solution, as Gilbert. The only thing is, when mind is not Gilbert, then it sees things clearly, and everything fits. That's one thing that very interesting is that when mind is just mind, everything, what appears to be contradictions, is resolved. What appears to be real is seen as false. What appeared before to be unreal is real. and it fits perfectly. So keep going. I think you're working on this, and it's not by accident that you were studying this. Don't ever think that that's causes and conditions that comes through that way, and it's not by accident. You're right there, and you're picking up on the mind waves. So that's just the way things go. Okay. So just
Thank you.
hang in there and keep studying. You're on the right path with that.
Thank you. I will keep studying. I'm working my way through the Lotus Sutra. I actually just finished the Father Metaphor and Decisive Liberation. Definitely an interesting sutra so far. So thank you though, Gilbert.
Yeah, if you ever have any problem, the Harry Miller is the one that is the resident expert on the Lotus Sutra. He's made it kind of his life's work to study that one in detail. So you can communicate with him. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, Robert.
Hey, hello, Gilbert.
Hello.
For many years, the past 4 or 5 years, you use two examples. One example is the painter painting on the canvas. You always use the painter painting. Another example, you always use the magician creating all sorts of things. So I'm just trying to test my understanding. When you talk about the bedrock, the Noumenon, so is it like the bedrock is so unmeasurable? It is beyond measure. Measure is not in this way. This realm we measure and we compare, but the realm of bedrock is nothing to measure, nothing is to compare, but it is so vast that it can be standing on top of it. So many painters, billions and billions of painters, billions and billions of magicians, and every single of those are sentient. They didn't know that they are all literally growing like crystal, little tiny metrics. They're all getting the fundamental of their dream, of all their dream, the painting, the canvas, the magician, the flower, the firework. They are just all these little tiny bits of little things on the bedrock. I mean, I'm just trying to understand. It's like listening to what you just mentioned today. That seems to be it's not even a picture. It's almost like describing describing something. It's not a thing. You're almost like describing the difference of two worlds, but actually it's one world.
It's interesting, and you're recognizing how difficult it is to try to articulate a meaning without being trapped on your own with your own words. I want to, because you mentioned the one about the magician, I wanted to explain that to some of the people who maybe don't have an experience with that. And that's a reference to the Buddha Nature Treatise, where in the Buddha Nature Treatise, they talk about that this magician is there and he conjures up a tiger. And conjuring up the tiger, of course, is an illusion. But then the tiger then devours the magician, because the magician is also an illusion. This is a reference to the Yogacara school and the seventh consciousness, which is represents the magician, and the sixth consciousness, which represents the tiger, the appearance of it. And the magician believes that he is the manufacturer of everything, until once it's seen in the practice that the sixth consciousness and the five sensory consciousness are all illusory. They serve as no foundation for the magician. And having no foundation, that is why the tiger devours the seventh consciousness, because the seventh consciousness is dependent upon the information being received and putting together an appearances. And once there's no appearances there that are held and understood to be real, then the seventh consciousness has no value, and it falls through. This is what you do when you're sitting to meditate, is that when you put aside any kind of mental impressions and you just simply keep the mind aware, it's not that the mind disappears, it is the ego that disappears, and everything connected with the ego is there. It is the destruction of this fundamental ignorance that when we're sitting to meditate is the goal. We don't understand that. We sitting there thinking that we want to become the ultimate magician or master, but it's not in that way. We have to let go of that. And so that's kind of where you're at. And that's why you have to just keep working that. And in your daily practice, which you've been very good, you've understood how to decipher this through your practice. Then if you do it in this way, it will work for you. Okay. Okay, David, go ahead.
I want to thank you very much for the talk. If I could say, I was kind of following along, but could not really. I could not just sit there and have a dialogue with you about what you presented. I would have to certainly watch it a number of times. But the one point I really picked up on is when you talked about getting into the Diamond Sutra for the first time. Well, I'm taking the plunge into the sutras, only it's the Heart Sutra. And I guess what I wanted to ask is, does the Heart Sutra very much address the Noumenon in the similar way that maybe the Diamond Sutra does?
It addresses it to the extent that it sees it as all of the phenomena is empty. So it's going through no eye, ear, no tongue, body, mind, no sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, thought. There's no realms of any of those. So this in terms of presenting all of these things, it's saying these appearances are not real. But then what it says is it talks about this perfected wisdom, Anyatara Samyak Sambodhi. And this Anyatara Samyak Sambodhi is the awakening of the mind as to how things work. And the whole thing is looking at it and going from the viewpoint of Avalokiteshvara, looking at it and going, none of this stuff exists or doesn't exist. It is empty. It is empty of existence, but not in the way that we look at things. It is empty because it all belongs to mind. We need not have to negate it and say appearances are irrelevant. No, they're part of mind. We cannot separate that out from mind. So we see things and say all of this stuff is functioning, but when we begin to look at it, then we have an interest in it because it's not a negation in a nihilistic way, but it is a way of looking at it and using Avalokiteshvara Kuan Yin Bodhisattva, which represents compassion, to see that there's suffering, but the suffering is illusory. And so when it sees this in this way, then that is a springboard. So you have to read and reread it in this kind of a context. And then it will help you to understand and then contemplate it. And then it will work. Okay. So it's just something that no matter how many commentaries you see of different people and read it, whether it's Red Pines or whatever, you need to contemplate, and that's important. You can't just borrow somebody's realizations. You have to realize it yourself. That's why the Diamond Sutra makes it very difficult for you to kind of like, get it. No matter how many times somebody talks about the Diamond Sutra, it's very rare that somebody listening to it will become immediately awakened from it.
Well, should I perhaps move beyond Red Pine and Master Shen Yan and just begin to contemplate the words and then go deeper beyond the words?
Well, that's what you do, is you have to look at what does this mean. But if you're looking at somebody else's, then all you are is a librarian for their own insights. You have to go beyond what's being said. That's the mistake a lot of people make. And I'm very glad that you're presenting this, because people will think, oh, if I read this one and I read this interpretation or that interpretation, then that's something that's very important. And so then they look at it, but they never make it their own. And that's why I use that example of the young man that says, I want to know how you do that. Not that I'm listening to how, that, wow, you can do this, I want to know how you do it. And that's the thing, is that requires you to have a sincere practice and to learn how to contemplate. It comes with time. It's something that if I could teach everybody how to contemplate immediately, well, that's great, but it's not that easy. You have to walk it yourself. Okay. And that just takes time and contemplating. I did that with Robert for a long time, and the thing with him is he just kept putting one foot in front of the other, not that he's so highfalutin. I don't want to, get him too big of a head, but I mean, he made progress in that way. Okay. By doing it that way. So just keep practicing. You still have time. So, just be mindful of your limited amount of breaths and keep working sincerely, and you'll get there.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You got it. By the way, can you guys see me? I can't see myself on the thing. I just think I disappeared. You can see me? Okay. I disappeared on my own screen. Okay, Michael, go ahead.
Yeah. Hi, Gilbert. Thanks for emphasizing that in all of this, it's the most important to understand how mind works and to act from this realization instead of trying to cleaning up consciousness. So one thing, I'm not sure you talked about it today, but a phrase which is very important, and in the past you mentioned it. It's like about the functioning of mind. Is like mind is very dynamic and fast, and in a sense it can plan and visualize things or and then watch consciousness catch up. So maybe I wonder whether you could maybe comment on this. And the reason why I'm asking this is because earlier today I came across a passage of Bankai. He's a Japanese master, and I wonder whether I can read it, and because it addresses this thing. And maybe I can post it. It's like a paragraph, maybe 5 sentences. So I posted it in the chat, so I will read it. So it's like a student comes to Bankai to visit him. And then Bankai tells him about the true mind, the Buddha mind. And it goes like this. As proof that your Buddha mind is unborn and freely functioning, when you came from Sendai, it's a place, having heard about Bankai, so himself, the master, you, the student, you traveled a long way. But as you stopped for the night, here and there along the road, you weren't thinking continuously about me. In the daytime, you looked around at all the sights, and if you had traveling companions, you talked to them. But even though you didn't walk along thinking about our meeting and deliberately keeping it in mind at every step of the way, in the end, you arrived here at my place. This is what's meant by the Buddha mind being unborn and perfectly managing things. So somehow I felt reminded of this consciousness, watching consciousness catching up when I read this.
I think that what that means, and it's kind of something that really hit Rick a lot. My most senior student was just follow function, and following function in the present moment is what we do. So we follow function, yet we put one step in front of the other because we know we're heading on this path, but it doesn't mean that we abandon the present moment. So in the present moment, there's things that we have to deal with, but that all has to do with mind. And so we follow this function, but in a way that is perfect. There's no need for him to be thinking about this master unless he wants to take time to think about what he's going to ask the master. But it should not occupy his present moment in terms of what he's doing. And so he's telling him it is ordinary and mundane. This mind that you have, it's here. It's unborn. There's nothing that you can get from this that will change that. It is just this way. And so this, I think, is probably a very important way of looking at things in terms of saying it's just this ordinary mind. And we don't understand that. We're thinking that we need to make this mind, we need to condition it in a way in which the mind will come into some clear understanding or whatever it is. But it isn't in that way. It is just simply that it's this mind. And as long as we keep it this way and we keep the mind in function, then it works fine. It is when we try to think that this kind of an understanding or whatever it is different from this mind, that it's special or whatever, we mess it up. And so what he's doing is clearly saying it's just this ordinary mind. And that's important in terms of this practice, rather than trying to make it something special or supernatural type of a mind, that someone's trying to aspire to. It's just this mind. So hopefully that'll help.
Thank you.
Okay. Tori, you had a question. No? You should have one. Any other questions? We have a few minutes left. Nobody? I wanted to find out whether you're following along, or is this like, did you fall off the grid when I was talking about this? Mina, how did you do with this?
I'm following along.
Okay. I figured you would. I think this is something that is right where you should be hearing right now. And so I think it's quite beneficial to you. So anybody else? Wei Shan, how did you do with this?
I'm following along.
You're following along?
Okay, I will for Michael's posting. I like to use today's talk to try to understand it. So this is what it meant by Buddha's mind being unborn and perfectly managing, arriving at the master's place. Meaning it's unborn. It's already there. You don't need to walk there. It's always there. And but in the meantime, walking along to the Buddha's master's place is mind function. That's my understanding.
Yeah, I think that it helps to frame it rather than what he was saying is, you're coming here to try to obtain something from me. but in fact, you already have it. You've never lost it. It never was born. I cannot make it born in you. It is something that you just simply have to awaken to the fact that in this very moment, this is the Buddha mind, and see things in that way. And then, and that's the part, like I say, I was doing the living ones, but I wanted to come here and throw you guys into the deep end, and say, time to get back on the clock and start working on this again. And so then when we go back and we start talking about the sutras, you'll see how beautifully this all fits together. And if you don't believe me, just go to a sutra, and read, and all of a sudden you'll go, wow, there it is. That's what Gilbert was talking about. Okay. So I think that will work. Any other questions? Don't make me volunteer you. So Wendy, okay, go ahead, Wendy.
So there is nothing to get. So is that you already have it, so nothing to, you still come to lecture, you still try to get something, wisdom.
Well, the thing is, it's just like the teacher that said he had nothing to teach his student. And then the young student said, but master, if you have nothing to teach me, then why am I learning from you? And he says, you're learning from me until you realize there's nothing to get. If you can sincerely say that you understand that profoundly, then you don't have to come to the class unless you want to show up to benefit other people. But when we say it's nothing to get, this is book learning, understanding. But you have to put that into practice. So you put it into practice by being in the present moment and being awake all the time, constantly keeping yourself awake. It's like trying to slap yourself when you're driving, when you're so sleepy. Don't fall asleep. Don't fall asleep. Stay awake. And you can do that. Shifu, he was that way at the end of retreats. He kept imploring the people, don't fall back into it so quickly. Try to extend this feeling out for longer. And little by little, people would, start going back to their regular habits. But once you do this, then little by little, it will come to you. You'll get it. Okay. When I say you'll get it, it is not anything that you don't already have. So that's why you'll get it, because you got it already. But you don't know that because you're a dream and you think that you're Wendy. You don't know you're. It's like those cheap Chinese soap operas where the people don't understand that they were like the daughter of the CEO of the company all the time, or whatever it is. They have different ones where the people discover that they had this royalty to them. You do. You all have this nobleness to you. You just have to realize that. Okay.
Thank you.
So, yeah, you're welcome. Okay, I think that's about it, unless there's any late questions. We'll continue on with this. Again, be patient. You'll be fine. You'll be able to get this as it goes along. We switched gears for a while, and I wanted to come back and again kind of throw you into the deep end with this, because this is so pivotal in terms of understanding how mind works. And it's difficult. It's difficult for me, to try to say, how does Noumenon and phenomenon, how they work? And then you have to understand, and you see why Nagarjuna was presenting things in the way he was presenting things, just to make sure that people wouldn't get the wrong idea about it, or say, that's it. The moment they say that's it, then they've missed it, or the idea of existent or non-existent, or which one's real and which one isn't. It is something that really defies description from the samsaric side. So keep practicing. We'll continue on next week. So don't be worried if you don't understand it right away. This is valuable, incredibly valuable. and you just kind of listen to it and get used to it and then process it, contemplate it. This is where it begins to pay off, is when you begin to contemplate it. There's not one of you that can't get this, okay? Because you already got it anyway. It's just a matter of just awakening to it, okay?